Eli Vance knew Texas. He knew its dust. He knew its heat. For 25 years the plains had been his life. The sun rose, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Eli would be up before it, coffee brewing over a crackling fire. His days were long. They were filled with the lowing of cattle. He mended fences under the vast, unending sky. He understood the language of the wind. He knew the meaning of a distant thunderhead. His boots were worn, caked with the soil of 1,000 rides. His world was one of horses and hard work. The rhythm of the seasons dictated his tasks. Spring meant new calves, their wobbly legs finding purchase on the earth. Summer brought relentless sun, the air thick and still. Autumn was roundup time, a period of intense labor and shared purpose. Winter offered a brief respite, a chance to mend gear and reflect. Eli was a man of few words. His hands, calloused and strong, did most of his talking. They spoke of a life lived close to the land, a life of quiet dignity. He loved the open range. It stretched out in every direction, a sea of grass and scrub. There was a harsh beauty to it, a sense of freedom that filled his soul. Yet, it was a demanding life. It asked for everything a man had. It offered little in the way of comfort. Eli did not complain. This was the life he had chosen. Or perhaps it was the life that had chosen him. He was a part of the land, and the land was a part of him, inseparable and enduring. The cattle were his constant companions. He knew their habits, their needs. He doctored the sick ones. He protected them from predators. He guided them to fresh pasture and water. It was a solitary existence for the most part, but there was a deep satisfaction in it. He was a good cowboy, respected by the few other ranchers scattered across the immense landscape. His days were predictable, yet each held its own small uncertainties, its own quiet triumphs. He was content, or so he thought. Sometimes a different sound would reach Eli's ears. It was a faint drone, high above the prairie. He would stop his horse. He would shield his eyes and search the bright blue. An aeroplane, a tiny silver speck. It moved with a grace the birds possessed. It seemed to mock the earthbound creatures below. Eli watched until it disappeared. He wondered where it was going. He wondered what it was like, up there, to see the world from such a height, to feel the wind in a different way. These sightings were rare at first, but they became more frequent over the years. Each one stirred something within him, a curiosity, a longing he could not quite name. The airplanes were symbols of another world, a world beyond his dusty trails and familiar horizons. They spoke of progress, of adventure. They were so different from his slow, steady life. He read about them in old newspapers when he went to town for supplies. He learned about brave pilots. He learned about far-off places they reached. The sky above Texas was enormous. Eli had always known that. He had watched countless sunsets bleed across it. He had seen storms gather and unleash their fury. But the airplanes made him see it differently. It was not just a ceiling anymore, it was a place, a realm to be explored. He imagined the view. The ranch would look like a child's toy map. The cattle would be tiny dots. The great rivers would be silver ribbons. This vision captivated his quiet moments. He never spoke of this fascination to anyone. It was a private thing, a secret dream he held close. The other cowboys talked of cattle prices, of weather, of women in distant towns. They would not understand a man who looked at the sky with such yearning. So Eli kept his thoughts to himself. He continued his work. He rode the fences. He tended the herd. But now a part of him was always listening for that distant hum, that whisper of wings on the wind. One hot afternoon, the whisper became a roar. Eli was out on the range checking a water trough. He heard a strange sputtering sound. It grew louder, closer. He looked up. An aeroplane. But this one was different. It was flying low. Too low. It circled once, twice. Then it glided down. It landed in a surprisingly smooth manner on a flat stretch of pasture not far from him. Eli urged his horse forward, his heart pounding with a mixture of alarm and excitement. He had never seen an airplane so close. A figure climbed out of the cockpit. A woman. She wore a leather flying helmet and goggles. She pulled them off, revealing a face smudged with oil but bright with a wide smile. Her hair was the color of corn silk. "Afternoon," she called out, her voice clear and strong. "Bit of engine trouble. Hope you don't mind me borrowing your field." She was young, full of life. She moved with an easy confidence that Eli found remarkable. She introduced herself as Lucky Lucy May, a barnstorming pilot, she said. Eli, usually a man of few words, found himself talking. He asked her about her aeroplane. It was a biplane, she explained, a Jenny. She spoke of towns she had visited. She told tales of flying through storms. She described the joy of looping and rolling high above the earth. Her eyes sparkled when she talked about flying. It was clear she loved it more than anything. Eli listened, spellbound. He had never met anyone like Lucy May. She was from a different world, a world he had only dreamed of. Lucy May was skilled with engines too. She tinkered with the sputtering motor. Eli watched, fascinated by her capable hands. She asked him about his life, about the ranch. He told her a little. He felt a strange connection to this woman. She understood the call of open spaces, even if hers was the sky and his the land. By late afternoon, the engine was purring smoothly again. Lucy May thanked Eli. She said she would be taking off soon. She offered him a quick flight, but he hesitated, a lifetime of earthbound caution holding him back. Lucy May prepared for departure. The sun was beginning to dip lower. It cast long shadows across the plains. She climbed back into her aeroplane. She waved to Eli. "Maybe next time!" she shouted over the engine's noise. Then the Jenny bumped across the pasture. It gathered speed. It lifted into the air. Eli watched it climb. He watched it turn and head east. It became a speck once more. Then it was gone. The silence it left behind felt heavy, profound. The encounter with Lucy May changed something in Eli. Her stories, her passion, her freedom, they had ignited a spark. His old life, the life he had known for so long, suddenly felt small. The vast plains seemed to confine him. He thought about her words. He thought about the joy in her eyes when she spoke of flying. He looked at his calloused hands. They were good for roping cattle, for mending fences. But could they learn to guide an aeroplane? The question took root in his mind. For days, Eli wrestled with his thoughts. He went about his chores, but his mind was elsewhere. He saw Lucy May's smile. He heard the roar of her engine. He felt the pull of the sky. It was a powerful calling. It promised a different kind of freedom, a freedom he had never imagined, but it meant leaving everything he knew. His ranch, his cattle, his way of life, it was a terrifying prospect. Yet the thought of staying, of never knowing, was perhaps even more frightening now. He was no longer a young man. Starting something new at his age seemed foolish to some. He knew what they would say. A cowboy belonged on a horse, not in an aeroplane. But Lucy May had shown him that paths could change. She had spoken of a flight school she sometimes taught at in the city. The idea began to form. A daring, improbable idea. He could sell the herd. He could learn to fly. The thought was like a wild horse, bucking and kicking in his chest. It was a chance. Perhaps his last chance for a different kind of life. Section 5. Trading spurs for wings, the price of a dream. The decision once made settled a quiet calm over Eli. It was the biggest gamble of his life. He rode into the nearest town. He found a buyer for his cattle. It was a difficult thing to do. Each animal represented years of work, of care. He knew their lineage. He knew their temperaments. Selling them felt like selling a part of himself. The other ranchers looked at him with surprise. Eli Vance giving up ranching? It was unheard of. He offered no explanations, he just nodded. He sold his horse too. Old Blue, his faithful companion for over a decade. That was the hardest part. He ran his hand down Blue's strong neck. He whispered his goodbyes. The horse nuzzled him, not understanding. Eli walked away quickly. He did not look back. He sold his saddle, his ropes, his spurs, the tools of his trade, the symbols of his identity. He kept only a few personal belongings, a bedroll, a change of clothes, and the memory of Lucy May's aeroplane soaring into the Texas sky. The money from the sale felt strange in his pocket. It was a considerable sum, but it felt like less than he had given up. He stood on the porch of his small ranch house one last time. The wind whispered through the dry grass. The familiar scent of dust and sagebrush filled his nostrils. This place held his history, his sweat, his quiet joys and sorrows. Leaving it was like tearing out a piece of his heart. But the call of the sky was stronger. He had to go. He took a stagecoach, then a train. Each mile carried him further from his old life, further from the open range. He watched the landscape change. The vast plains gave way to rolling hills, then to towns and cities. It was a new world, a loud world, a crowded world. He felt like a stranger in a strange land. But there was no turning back now. He had traded his spurs for a dream of wings. He hoped it would be worth the price. He truly hoped. Section 6. City lights, unfamiliar sights, a new beginning. The city was a bewildering place for Eli. It was a cacophony of sounds. Car horns blared, people shouted, Trams clattered on steel tracks. The buildings were tall. They seemed to scrape the sky he longed to fly in. He had never seen so many people in one place. They rushed past him, their faces set, intent on their own purposes. Eli, used to the slow pace of the planes, felt overwhelmed. He clutched his small bag. He felt a long way from his quiet ranch. He found Lucy May's flight school. It was at a small airfield on the outskirts of the city. The airfield was a patch of green amidst the urban sprawl. Several small airplanes were parked near a collection of hangars and sheds. It was a relief to see them. They were a familiar sight in this unfamiliar world. He saw Lucy May there. She was instructing a young student. She spotted him and her face lit up with that same bright smile. "Eli, you made it!" she exclaimed. Her welcome was a balm to his unsettled spirit. Lucy May introduced him to the other instructors. She showed him around the school. The hangars smelled of oil and canvas and something else. Adventure. He saw mechanics working on engines. He saw students poring over charts and manuals. It was a busy, purposeful place. Everyone there shared a common dream, the dream of flight. Eli felt a sense of belonging he had not expected. These people, they understood the call of the sky. He was not so alone after all. He found a small room to rent nearby. It was a simple room, but it was clean. It was a far cry from his ranch house under the wide Texas sky. But it would do. He spent his first few evenings just watching the airplanes. He watched them take off. He watched them land. He listened to the sound of their engines. It was a lullaby to him, a promise of what was to come. He was nervous, he was excited, he was ready to begin, he was ready to learn to fly. Section 7. Ground School and Hard Knocks, The Trials of a Trainee. Learning to fly was harder than Eli had imagined. It was not like riding a horse. A horse had a mind of its own, but you could feel its movements, anticipate its actions. An airplane was a machine. It responded to precise inputs. It required a different kind of understanding. The ground school classes were filled with charts, diagrams, and technical terms. Aerodynamics, navigation, meteorology. Eli, who had learned by doing all his life, struggled with the books. His mind, used to reading the land, found it hard to grasp the abstract concepts. He sat in the small classroom. He listened intently to the instructors. He took copious notes in his careful handwriting, but the information seemed to swirl in his head. Other students younger than him seemed to pick it up quickly. They asked smart questions. They talked confidently about lift and drag, about stalls and spins. Eli felt slow. He felt out of place. He was a cowboy, not a scholar. Doubts began to creep in. Had he made a mistake? Was he too old for this? His first few lessons in the cockpit were no easier. The controls felt alien in his hands. The rudder pedals were awkward beneath his boots. Lucy May was patient. She explained everything clearly, but there was so much to remember. Pre-flight checks, throttle settings, maintaining airspeed and altitude. His movements were clumsy. He overcorrected. The airplane lurched and swayed. He felt a frustration he had not known since he was a boy, learning to break a wild colt. This iron bird was a stubborn beast. There were moments when he wanted to give up, to pack his bag and go back to something he understood. But then he would remember why he had come. He would remember the sight of Lucy May's airplane soaring free. He would look up at the sky. He would see the other students taking off, their faces alight with concentration and joy, and he would set his jaw. He was Eli Vance. He had faced down blizzards and droughts. He had overcome hardship before. He would not be beaten by this. Section 8. Against the wind, perseverance and progress. Eli kept at it. He studied late into the night. He asked Lucy May endless questions. He practiced the movements in his mind over and over. Slowly, painstakingly, things began to click. He started to understand the feel of the aeroplane. He learned to listen to the sound of the engine. He began to anticipate how the machine would respond. His hands, once clumsy on the controls, became more confident. His movements grew smoother. He was learning a new language, the language of flight. Lucy May was a good teacher. She knew when to push him. She knew when to offer encouragement. She saw his determination. She saw the cowboy's grit beneath his quiet exterior. "You're getting it, Eli," she would say after a particularly good practice landing. "You just need to trust yourself. And trust the aeroplane." Her faith in him helped him to keep going. He started to feel a sense of partnership with the machine. It was no longer an alien thing. It was becoming an extension of himself. There were still setbacks, bad landings, misjudged turns, moments of fear when the wind buffeted the small craft. But now, Eli knew how to recover. He knew how to correct his mistakes. He learned from each one. The theory he had struggled with in the classroom began to make sense in the air. He saw the principles of aerodynamics at work. He understood the importance of the pre-flight checks. He started to feel like a pilot, not a cowboy trying to be a pilot, but a pilot. The day came when Lucy May told him he was almost ready for his first solo flight. Eli felt a thrill course through him, a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Solo, alone in the sky. It was what he had been working towards for so many months. It was the ultimate test. He spent hours practicing his takeoffs and landings. He visualized every step. He wanted to be perfect. He wanted to prove to himself and to Lucy May that he could do it. The old cowboy was ready to earn his wings. Section 9. The Solo Sky, a new kind of freedom. The morning of his solo flight was clear and calm. The air was cool. The sun was just beginning to climb. Eli walked out to the aeroplane. He performed his pre-flight checks with meticulous care. Every strap, every gauge, every control surface. Lucy May stood by, watching him. She gave him a nod. "You're ready, Eli," she said. Her voice was calm, confident. He climbed into the cockpit. It felt different being there alone. The airplane seemed bigger, quieter. He taxied to the runway. He lined up. He took a deep breath. He pushed the throttle forward. The engine roared to life. The airplane vibrated. It began to move, faster and faster. Eli kept his hand steady on the stick. He felt the tail lift. Then, with a gentle pull, he was airborne. He climbed smoothly, steadily. He looked down. The airfield was shrinking below him. The cars on the nearby road looked like toys. He was flying, alone. A profound sense of peace settled over Eli. Up here the world was different. It was quiet. It was beautiful. He saw the city spread out like a map. He saw the distant hills. He felt the wind beneath his wings. It was a feeling unlike anything he had ever known. It was not the freedom of the open range. That was a freedom tied to the earth. This was a different kind of freedom. A soaring, exhilarating freedom. He was no longer bound by gravity. He was part of the sky. He circled the airfield just as Lucy May had instructed. He performed his turns. He checked his instruments. He felt a deep sense of accomplishment. He, Eli Vance, the Texas cowboy, was flying an airplane. He had done it. He had traded his old life for this, and in this moment, high above the earth, he knew he had made the right choice. He prepared for his landing. He brought the airplane down gently, smoothly. As the wheels touched the grass, a wide smile spread across his face. He had found his new horizon.